sudden location and scenery change. If you're wondering why I'm in a different place and wearing completely different clothes, it's now a week later, and there's no film crew behind me this time. But that's because we had to add one more interview. This came up out of the blue, and I feel like it's a story that needs to be told and needs to be heard about an organization that needs to be recognized. Coming to you from Santa Monica, we've got Lana Negrete. Welcome to the show, Lana.
Thank you, Coco.
How are you doing today? How's this Friday treating you?
It's a loaded question, but I have to say I'm feeling a lot of gratitude today.
Gratitude, the attitude of gratitude. What's causing it for you?
I think community outpour and support right now. Everything I've been through personally with my business lately has been devastating, but the community has topped that balance. And so the community outpouring of support and love and help. Today is a day filled with meetings from people near and far that are stepping up to help us rebuild. So that's where that's.
Well, that being said, I obviously know a bit of the story already, but to fill in our audience, what happened to you in your business?
Well, besides COVID, having our music store and our music school greatly affected with the shutdown, we were then looted on May 31st in Santa Monica, pretty bad. I was actually there with my husband when it started. I had to leave because it became violent and there was guns presented on the scene. And it was really emotional. It was like watching my home be broken into with my kids inside, because this was everything I had worked to build up. My dad started the business 50 years ago, so there was a lot of sentiment and emotion behind it. And as you know, it's also the spot where we run outreach through the arts. So I was really hurt for not just myself, but the entire community.
That actually sounds scary, nerve-wracking. Words can't even describe what that feeling actually is. So I wanted to ask you then. So for starters, let's look at this from the outside and work our way in. Outreach through the arts. What can you tell me about outreach to the arts?
So Outreach to the Arts is a nonprofit program of CRE. It's one of the many wonderful programs. We specifically give scholarships to kids for private music lessons. We have a program with the district that offers the kids that are on free and reduced lunch in 4th grade through 12th grade that are also participating in the music program an opportunity to get half-hour private lessons from professionals. We also scholarship them with instrument help. So if they don't have an instrument, we have a lot of donated instruments we're able to loan out.
That's beautiful.
The purpose is to provide equitability and access to all kids, because predominantly in our school, Santa Monica Malibu Unified, you know, the color across the band and orchestra was pretty monotone. And the reason being that most kids couldn't be competitive enough to keep moving up in the program without access to lessons. So that's just one facet. More recently, we started the lab, which is more geared towards credit deficient high schoolers, where we're offering classes in Logic Pro, Ableton Live, DJ classes, and the newest addition is working the Switch control room for a podcast. So it's giving them real, real trade abilities so that they can actually take those skills and become independently supported by them and get a job in the industry. So that's our latest endeavor, which was briefly interrupted with the looting, but we plan to step right back in and continue to build that program.
I definitely love that. You know, refusing to get beaten, especially when life throws you a curveball, is, well, something I stand for quite a bit. I'm sure everyone else listening out there does as well. But I'm just floored because I heard about this program when I got the overview of what CRE does when I first joined up 6 years ago at this point. 7, 6, 7, something like that. But I never actually knew a whole lot about what outreach through the arts does.
Ora.
And Ora. That is That is, first off, that is an amazing acronym. And I'm going to start using that because that is a lot easier to say.
Yeah,
But
ATA. Everyone just says ATA, but yeah.
I love the idea, though, the concept of giving everyone a chance, because as a musician myself, I honestly think that the power of music belongs to everyone. And I'm sure, say, if anyone's listening to these interviews in sequence, you'll hear when Alan and I talked about it. But music is a powerful tool that can really make, transform, and enrich lives. So the fact that you have these programs running, young kids can get in and get comfortable on an instrument and then go on to become teenagers who, when they're looking for a field or some kind of education in the industry, they can learn skills also through this program. I think it's kind of a win-win.
Yeah, we also too have just started something called Allies Not Enemies, where we're working with the police department locally, which the timing of all of this is perfect. Providing the police officers an opportunity without their uniform on to make connections with the kids in the community, because a big part is understanding the community you work with and that you're serving. So I'm excited about continuing to build that partnership, because I think right now we need unity between specifically law enforcement and our underserved youth right now.
Allies, not enemies.
Mhm.
I love that. So let's dive in a little bit and let's talk about the shop itself. How have things been affected when COVID started, when things started closing down? How were you guys affected then?
I mean, we were affected greatly because the whole curbside service option that everybody was sort of given as a blanket option to stay somewhat in business doesn't really apply to a music store. If someone's going to buy a $3,000 saxophone, it's not going to be over the phone and then we're going to toss it in their car. It's not like a hamburger or a pizza. So that was difficult, but we still tried to do, no contact delivery and no contact pickup. People were renting, you know, keyboards and guitars, and we moved all our lessons virtually online, but we were affected in the sense that we lost half of our students. I think people felt like taking music lessons was a luxury and not a necessity. They were fearful that they were going to either lose their income or had already lost their income source. So we lost a lot of students there. And then, of course, same thing with the store. People weren't able to come in and shop. And again, it's not considered a necessity for most. So we lost a lot of foot traffic, a lot of business out of our store and our school. But we made a pivot move, which was to do as much as we could do online to continue to deliver instruments in a safe manner, respecting all the COVID procedures. But it's been tough because we have our overhead expenses and a high rent to maintain. We don't own the building. So it's been a tough run, but we keep just trying to pivot. Every time we come up against a roadblock, we say, okay, what can we do to get around this?
Yeah, and unfortunately, music is, I would definitely call music a necessity. I'm sure you would agree, but that is unfortunately the hard truth of it all. When people's jobs, livelihoods, and way of living is uncertain, it really does sort of take a back seat to issues. And I'm certainly not complaining. I mean, I understand, but at the same time, I also feel like in times of hardship like this, we need music now more than ever.
Yep. I mean, we already understand the social and emotional benefits, the cognitive benefits for both young and old from music education. And I think those that are in power to sort of set guidelines and rules for businesses, unfortunately, they're not thinking of those things. So it was left up to us to really promote all of those advantages through our social media and website and whatever we could do to remind people that while it may not seem like an essential necessity right now, in some ways it really is for our soul, for our mental health and emotional health. I think a lot of people were feeling left without human connection. And there's something in the way of playing music even by yourself or participating in an online lesson where you get to sort of escape the day to day for that 30 minutes, that hour, and just be creative. So,
I, I would expand on that a little bit. I wouldn't just say emotional health, I'd say emotional wealth. I feel like you really can thrive with music.
yeah, I agree. I agree. That's why I left what I was doing before to follow this dream, because I want to make sure that these types of programs don't fall by the wayside in the public school system, and that there's multiple opportunities to provide access to all kids in communities where it might seem like you have to have this discretionary income in order to be able to afford the opportunity to create music. I really feel like it's something that shouldn't only be accessible to a certain percentage of people. The people who need it the most sometimes are those that can't afford it. And that's the whole purpose behind outreach through the arts.
But what were you doing before this then?
What wasn't I doing? Well, I worked in marketing. I have my 6, my 63, my 7. So being an insurance broker and helping wealthy companies and individuals um, grow their money was part of it. And I wasn't ever completely satisfied um, doing that. And my husband, who grew up one of 10, and he grew up in the projects in Culver City, and he was like, listen, I grew up with nothing, and I don't need to have a big house. I don't need to chase, the next big thing. For me, what's important is that you're happy so that we're all happy. And if you have a goal to help kids, I think you should do it, even if it means we have to give up the nice cars we drive and the house we live in. I think it's worth doing if it helps you sleep better at night. So that's what started it. It catapulted it. And then from there, it bled into me helping take over the family business so that I could continue to see that thrive, because Ada and the store obviously work hand in hand.
So you basically gave up one sort of, I wouldn't even say dream, but you gave up a pretty comfortable position that a lot of people would absolutely jump for to follow a dream and help make other people's lives better.
Yep. And sometimes I question myself when my kids go, are we going to have that house again with the waterfall in the back? Or when are we, they used to ask that question. Now it's, something that they hardly remember it. But I honestly get more joy and fulfillment when I feel like I've even helped just one kid, or I get one thank you letter in the mail from a student that's so appreciative to have had the opportunity to take lessons. And that makes up for whatever material things that we've had to give up.
That resonates with me on a really deep level, because that's the whole reason why I do everything I do. The whole reason I skate, perform, play music, anything, is not for recognition. It's not for notoriety. It's not for any sort of fame or validation from the world around me. It's to show the world that anyone can do anything they want to do if they want it. And I think wanting it is all you need, or all you should need. There shouldn't be prerequisites to your own passion or your own dream, whether they be money or your skin color. I feel like anyone should have access to anything they want. So that's kind of the same way. I resonate with everything that you seem to stand for. I honestly feel like we could be great friends.
Definitely. I think most artists kind of come from that place. And I think everybody in my family, my siblings, all went the artistic avenue. I was the only one who went straight to college after high school and was like, I'm not going to do that because, it's going to make making a living really tough. But the comedy behind all that in our family is like, oh, look, you came full circle and ended up really just following your heart. I always remember when my dad told me, listen, if you don't want to go to this school, I will send you to the best trash school there is if you want to learn how to pick up trash. I don't care what it is. I just want you to be passionate about it. And I've taken that with me my whole life. And I try to give that same advice to my kids that, if you love what you do and you do what you love, you will be successful at it. It's what success means. And success is really being fulfilled inside. And like you said, it's not about, a lot of people will say, wow, I didn't even know all this work that you're doing. I'm like, well, I don't have time to advertise what we're doing because I'm doing. And for me, that's the most important part of it. It's actually what created my relationship with CRE, because I was trying to start my own 501c3, and all the time was being absorbed with paperwork and checks and balances. And I thought, how am I ever going to actually do the work and serve the community if I'm just doing all this paperwork? And there entered Greg and one of the blind musicians that was coming into the store to get a saxophone fixed and a mouthpiece or something. And it was like it was totally meant to be, because CRE has given me the opportunity to just focus on running my program and doing the work I love and not being bogged down with all the other administrative pieces of it. Plus, I'm connected with people like you and all the other wonderful programs, and we all share this same centered goal and focus to help the community through the arts.
That's, I love you.
I love you too.
You are absolutely amazing. And I think that these sort of partnerships and friendships that blossom, especially around artists, it seems, I feel like they were meant to be.
Yeah.
And I honestly, I'm eternally grateful. Again, I had heard about your program, but I knew nothing about it until now. But I'm eternally grateful to CRE for giving you a home and facilitating the ability for you to just run and keep on making people's lives super meaningful. So, that being said, I really wanted to ask you about the whole situation in what's going on right now with repairing the shop, with repairing the programs and mending the wounds that aren't physical, dealing with what is happening right now. What do you have to say?
Well, I think first of all, people need to understand that there's peaceful protests that are happening that have a huge cause that has been like a festering sore that has bursted. And I think those the connection of everybody coming together to march, to protest, to scream, to yell, to be angry, to be sad, to be heard is necessary, and it's happening, and it's a beautiful thing to watch. But I think the looting that happened was completely separate from that. And I'm so disappointed that between the media and other sources that it's become somewhat of a focal point that has either driven people's attention away from why people are protesting, or it's sort of drowned out the sounds of the cries of the protesters, because they're two totally separate things. A lot of people I hear saying, oh, these protests are causing the looting. Well, the looters are opportunistic people who are seeing an opportunity to come and take advantage of a situation because they realize there's large crowds and that, a police
You've
authority.
now got a free scapegoat.
Right. So, but they're not in support at all of the movement. And I think that's what needs to be looked at. I think there's multiple groups on that side that are well organized and have their own separate goals. And then I think mixed in that is young kids that don't have their frontal lobe developed yet, that made a stupid one-time decision that they might regret 10 years from now, by participating in it because they wanted to get something free or they wanted to partake in anarchy. So that's first and foremost. And I think that's important to note, because too many people are confused at the idea that the looting is associated with the protests, and I don't think it is at all. I think it's unfortunate that these people have chose this protest to distract any media attention or anybody's attention away from what people are marching about, to be talking about and focusing on, atrocities. I mean, because listen, they looted family owned businesses. Some of these businesses don't have any insurance at all. And they looted a music store that was serving the community, serving at-risk youth. I don't think that, obviously, that has nothing to do with the Black Lives Matter movement or with any protesting. It's just people who aren't thinking and are making horrible decisions in their life. And I hope at some point they look back and realize not only the damage that they did to a physical space in a store or to a community, but the damage that they did to this amazing opportunity where the world has come together to say enough is enough.
Wow. I, I'm speechless. That was powerful. I think if anything can be taken away from this moment right now, for all of you out there listening slash watching, it's that. I think, and truth be told, it is a beautiful time right now. And a lot of people would say that it's odd to use the word beautiful to describe our current climate. However, amidst the pandemic, amidst the injustices, amidst all the chaos that's going on, I feel like, and I've said this in the previous interviews, so forgive me if it sounds redundant listening to all of these back to back, but it's been a week for me. I feel like in this time, in this day and age, we're seeing people come together for each other like we've never seen before. Unfortunately, we're also seeing people push each other away or tear each other apart like we've never seen them before. But I feel like people are really trying to be communities, to be more than just a collective of living organisms within a geographical space, but to really be friends, to be family, to be close to one another.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, in the morning after the looting, first of all, that night we had to board up the windows, and there was multiple people who I'm not even close with that offered, hey, I have plywood at a construction site, I'll meet you there. This is 11 o'clock at night with flashlights, and multiple people who came to board it up the next morning, a half hour before I even showed up to the store at 6:30 in the morning. There was already people there sweeping up glass. There's been neighbors coming to offer food for my employees. I've had a meal train of the families in our community bringing food to our apartment for me and my family so that I don't have to think about cooking dinner after a long day at work. There's just been people stopping by to offer just emotional support. I've gotten letters in the mail. I mean, honestly, after you see such destruction, to then wake up and to just see this outpouring of love and support from the community. We have the longest list going right now on multiple Excel spreadsheets of volunteers who just want to help, from artists to, again, just local neighbors who never came into our store but have walked past it a million times. Everyone wants to be a part of rebuilding. And I think the physical help of sweeping up the glass, the physical help of, quote unquote, rebuilding our store is really a healing process for everyone. Everyone wants to be a part of something that is healing. And whether it's helping a local business rebuild, their space physically, or it's participating in something much larger on the steps of, our congressmen and women in DC, everyone just wants to be a part, small or large, of rebuilding. And right now, I think some people feel, what can I do? So we are seeing a lot of people saying, I just want to be a part of something positive. So if I can bring muffins to your workers who are working all day here, I'd like to do that. And I love that because I understand how some people feel paralyzed. I often explain to people that I feel like the three balls in the center of a pendulum, where the right and the left is so loud, the energy is transferred in the center, and those of us in the middle are sort of overlooked and paralyzed by silence because there's so much going on and distraction on either end. And I think a lot of people in the community that feel like they're part of those three balls that are sort of paralyzed in the center, they just want to move now. They want to do something. They want to participate in whatever way they can. So I'm really excited and accepting, and I love seeing that happen right now because it's a great reminder that humans are good and humans are kind. And I think ultimately in our soul, we all really do want to help each other.
I'm not crying, you're crying. I actually, that's just it. And I think that's why the sense of community is really happening right now, because people want to be a part of a change, but not just for themselves or for each other, but because we're finally at a point, and I think it's why the Black Lives Matter movement is even a thing, because we are not, and I think we're now realizing that we don't have to be in a situation where we sit back and wait for things to happen. If we want a change, we can be that change. If we want to see something done, we can do it. No one has to sit around or defer to somebody else to get something done. I think people are now realizing that we can be the voice we want to hear and that we can do the things we want to see done.
Yeah, I agree. That's right.
And so I think that the physical the physical impact of having people show up and help board up the building, sweep up glass, send food out, all these things, I think they all pale in comparison to the grand message. And I think the grand message is that we're all on the same side. We don't have to be fighting at or against each other. We could be fighting with, alongside each other to get the things that we as a collective feel like we deserve, like fairness, equality, and love and warmth.
Yeah. Yeah. Allies, not enemies.
Allies, not enemies. We come back to this. I Every single interview I've done so far for this show has blown my mind in a different way. And these are people I know. I'm pulling from a pool of people that I know. And yet, it's almost as though I don't know any of the people I interview because they give me something I would have never thought about, heard of, opening me up to stories, or in your case, to an entire different piece of the whole puzzle that is CRE. And wow, I am emotional. But I love this. I love this process. I love everyone that's involved in it. And I love everyone who listens to these things. I get DMs, my social medias, of people telling me that they were glad that I got the stories that I did. And see, I feel like I'm the grateful one. I feel like I'm the lucky one, the fortunate one, because I'm getting to meet these people and hear these stories. But at the same time, I'm nothing special. All I am is a translator. All I am is the filter that gets these stories from the people who have them to a place where anyone can hear them. I don't feel like I'm worth all that much in the grand scheme of things, but at the same time, I feel like I'm so unbelievably lucky, and that duality is sort of a lot to deal with. So I guess if I had to, before I close anything out, before I ask you a few more questions, I just want to know, is there anything that I can do to be a part of this, to help in any capacity?
There always is. I mean, the more people that we have from different walks of life, especially when we're working with high school students, I think provides them a very realistic, tangible resource, idol, if you will, to look up to. Um, I think speaking for myself, growing up, I'm first generation here. My mom's from Trinidad. My dad's from Canada, but Spanish background. And
Trinidad, what do you know? My mom's
yeah,
from Trinidad.
no way. My mom's from CRE Village, Trinidad. So she grew up, barefoot till she was 12. I think she got her first pair of shoes or something, and bathing in a pipe in the middle of the road that everyone shared, and came here in her late teens to America. She experienced racism when they moved to Georgia. They weren't allowed to swim at the community pool. But
Oh man.
um, my life experience, and I look differently, so I've seen things on both ends of it where people are like, oh, well, you look white, or and they make assumptions about your culture based on how you look, and they
I
assume,
get that quite a bit.
yeah, they assume, right, that you one way or the other that you have had certain experiences in your life. And I think by bringing different people into the nonprofit, to giving young people an opportunity to hear from different people's perceptions, just reminds them that you cannot judge a book by its cover. It's such a basic thing, but it really is important. And you need to understand that people are all seeing life through their own lenses. And it's really, we don't talk about it enough, I think, in schools. We sort of touch on these general ideas like don't judge a book by its cover, but you really break it down, it's like if even as adults, at the big table up in DC, if we could really just understand that everybody has had different experiences and has a different pair of lens that they're looking through when living this life. And if we can appreciate and hear and listen and understand, then we would be able to solve a lot more problems and be able to work together. But the minute we only assume that our lens is the only lens that everybody should be looking through or is looking through, that's when problems are created. So by providing multiple individuals to help, then I think it gives kids the access to real people. They're not someone on TV. They're not someone who comes from generational wealth or corporate wealth that they sort of feel disconnected from. These are real people who have experienced real things in their lives and have overcome them and are not only successful in their own right, but are also wanting to share and help. And I hope when I work with kids from AUTA that one thing they take away is the need and the want and the ability to help others. If that baton can be passed on, then we're creating, I consider, generational wealth, because it's the wealth of giving. If they can continue to share their experience, share their knowledge. I just met a young man yesterday picking up repairs at a school in Malibu, and he's a custodian. And he was just so excited to talk to me about instruments, and he was just so articulate and just a really nice person. I felt his energy, and I took his information and was like, I would love for you to come talk to our kids and work with our kids at Outreach Through the Arts. I explained to him what we did, and he was so floored and by that, and he got a little emotional, and he was like, why would you pick me? And I said, because you're just an amazing, genuinely nice person. You're working in a field where you clearly don't get to share your passion with anyone. And I think those are the stories that kids need to hear, because they probably see you walking past you as you're cleaning the school as a custodian and have their own perception of, how your life is and maybe your experiences, but you have this whole other side to you that maybe you don't get to share often. So having everybody involved, yourself included, I think just makes our program that much sweeter.
I think that's beautiful, and especially touching on the things that we're taught in school, because yeah, I feel like the statement "don't judge a book by its cover" is almost limiting the growth and the empathy that comes with reaching out to people. I think it goes beyond that. I think it's, rather than "don't judge a book by its cover," I would say read the books you don't think you'll read.
Right.
Talk to people you wouldn't normally talk to.
Yep.
It's reach out to people who you wouldn't normally reach out to. You might be really surprised what you get back.
Yep. Especially nowadays, kids are so buried in their phones and technology, and they rely on social media to give them their sense of news or whatever. So whenever I do career day, I always tell people, the kids, that they really need to pick their heads up from the phone, look to their left and their right, because who they're rubbing elbows with now in class may or may not be their colleagues in the business world in the future, right?
You never know, and it's kind of ridiculous, but I know that you've got somewhere you've got to be, and I have no idea how long this has been. It's been a theme for this episode that every interview we have seems to run long. And I don't regret this at all, because I feel like everyone's got something they can share and a story that they can tell. But I guess before I throw you out the door, I will yes, I will ask you, is there anything, any advice that you have to share with the world? If you could sum up in one sentence, a piece of advice from your grand library that you want the world to take with them today.
God, the first thing that comes to mind is from Hamilton: talk less, listen more. I mean, that sums it up.
That's fantastic. And I have never seen Hamilton. I've always wanted to. I have a friend who is a diehard Hamilton fan and has seen it more times than I've seen, I'd say, a single individual show. And I've seen Little Shop of Horrors at least 8 times.
I love that musical. It was my kid's favorite, but it's become ours, and we listen to the soundtrack all the time. So that's what I think of all the time. Talk less, listen more.
Talk less, listen more. from the mouth of Lana Negrete, who runs outreach through the arts. And what is the name of your music store?
Santa Monica Music Center.
Santa Monica Music Center. It's got a nice ring to it.
Thank you, Coco.
You have an amazing day. I love you so much. Keep on keeping on, please.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.